Where's the ATM card? Let me handle it. I've got it covered, Donald asserted as I grappled with cancer's onslaught during my hospitalization. His smirk hinted at sinister intentions now that the ATM card was in his possession. Just so you're aware, there's $500,000 in there. Handle it with care, I warned him. The whereabouts of the ATM card weren't random. It was part of a broader strategy. Our marital bond and my trust weren't the sole factors at play. I harbored a meticulous plan to bring Donald to seat crashing down. Upon my return home to retrieve a few items, a divorce application lay on the table. As anticipated, the ATM card had vanished. Operation accomplished. To outsiders, the situation might appear bleak, yet for me, it marked only the initial phase of retribution. My name is Emily, a woman in her 40s, ostensibly a homemaker, cohabiting with Donald, my husband. Initially, our marital voyage was smooth sailing, but soon a tempest brewed, unveiling Donald's true essence. Donald masqueraded as a benevolent, caring spouse during the honeymoon phase of our marriage. However, beyond the initial euphoria, his true colors surfaced. He subscribed to the archaic notion that a wife's paramount duty was to cater to her husband's whims. His verbal assaults became a routine occurrence. A wife must defer to her husband's wishes. You ought to heed your husband's directives. Donald's rhetoric echoed relentlessly. Any deviation from his expectations led to vitriolic diatribes. For instance, he insisted on segregating laundry, prioritizing his garments over mine, disregarding efficiency. Donald adamantly rejected the idea, fearing contamination from my clothes. His obsession with cleanliness extended to our living space. His quarters demanded pristine conditions, any speck of dust prompting immediate rectification. Furthermore, meal times were marred by his capricious palate. Displeasure over a dish's composition resulted in outright refusal to dine. Yet his preferences were an enigma. Even his cherished dishes faced rejection if not aligned with his transient moods. A wife's duty is to cater to her husband's culinary desires. Failure to comply renders you unworthy, Donald's rationale echoed. Yet such demands were untenable. I couldn't endure his petulant outbursts indefinitely. Nevertheless, each lapse exacerbated the domestic tension, further eroding our relationship. I was trapped in a cycle of appeasement and resentment, unable to break free from his demands. This forced subservience exacted a toll. Collapsing mid-chores, I succumbed to unconsciousness, the clatter betraying my fall. As I crumbled, a vigilant neighbor alerted the building manager, who promptly discovered me and dialed for emergency assistance. Rushed to the hospital and slowly drifting back to consciousness, my hopeful whisper, "Let them find nothing amiss," was swiftly shattered. Cancer had stealthily invaded my body. Whether its presence exacerbated my vertigo or not remained uncertain, but the sensation was debilitating, rendering me incapable of remaining upright. A compassionate nurse provided support as I collapsed into a nearby chair. Subsequently, the doctor advised summoning family members. I dialed my parents' number instinctively, only to remember that Mom had departed years ago, leaving Dad in a fragile state, residing with my brother and his wife 3 hours away by plane, a journey impossible in haste. Faced with limited options, I reluctantly reached out to Donald, but my call was met with his unattended voicemail. A futile message lingered in digital limbo as he had meticulously silenced notifications from me, ensuring delayed acknowledgement. Though tempted to venture home myself, medical counsel deterred such recklessness, leaving me resigned to my plight. Hours later, Donald finally responded with a succinct promise. "I'll come to the hospital tomorrow. Wait for me." His terse message, devoid of concern, weighed heavily on my already burdened spirit. Earlier, I had explicitly implored Donald to deliver my essentials promptly, a change of attire, toiletries, and other necessities essential for the day's exigencies. Despite my persistent pleas, silence pervaded his end, amplifying my distress. When he eventually acknowledged my plea after a prolonged interlude, his retort, "Shut up and be quiet," struck a discordant note, particularly given the urgency of my situation. Disappointment mingled with resignation as Donald failed to materialize at the hospital, further eroding any lingering optimism. I endeavored to temper expectations, yet a sliver of hope stubbornly persisted, intensifying the agony of my inaugural hospitalization. The compassionate gestures of the nursing staff, though comforting, served as a poignant reminder of my solitary ordeal. True to his word, Donald materialized the following day, his casual observation upon seeing me. "You look healthier than I thought," a stark juxtaposition to the gravity of my predicament. "I expected you to be more frail." His remark ignited a fury within me. "Just set down whatever you have and leave," I spat, my gaze sharp as I angled my head. "I haven't brought anything," Donald retorted, his tone betraying confusion. Why was he even here then? Wasn't he tasked with fetching my belongings? My anger surged, manifesting in a piercing glare. "Then why bother showing up if you haven't brought what I asked for?" "It's utterly pointless," I snapped, my voice laced with indignation. His response was curt. "I had another errand." Bewildered, I demanded, "Another errand? What could possibly take precedence over this?" Donald hesitated, his demeanor hinting at an impending revelation. "If you have something to say it now," I pressed impatiently, my fatigue from anxiety amplifying my impatience. With an unsettling chuckle, he finally divulged, "Where's the ATM card?" "Let me manage it. Trust me." It clicked. He was here to locate the ATM card, presumably to wrest control of our savings for his own gain. His brazen self-interest, even in the face of adversity, elicited a deep sigh from me, yet Donald remained unperturbed, his smile unyielding as if oblivious to the gravity of the situation. I couldn't endure his presence any longer. It was time to take action. "There's $500,000 in there, so handle it with care," I disclosed, watching as realization dawned on him. $500,000, he exclaimed, a mix of surprise and delight coloring his features. To provide context, both Donald and I were ordinary office workers before marriage, devoid of any fortune. The source of this sudden wealth, stocks. Following a friend's advice, I had delved into stock market investments during my tenure as a housewife, culminating in a windfall. Initially intending to save it for the future, I had harbored reservations about divulging the existence of this sizable sum, fearing Donald's selfish tendencies. However, driven by a desire for retribution against his repeated acts of self-interest, I opted to reveal the money's existence, laying the groundwork for my retaliation. Donald appeared convinced that his machinations were proceeding smoothly, but little did he know, it wasn't going to be as straightforward as he imagined. Thankfully, it was a holiday, rendering the bank's counters inaccessible. With Donald's return to work scheduled for the next day, withdrawing the funds would likely have to wait until evening. This afforded me a window of opportunity to set my revenge plan in motion. After consulting with my doctor and obtaining clearance, I was granted temporary leave from the hospital. Tomorrow would mark the culmination of my vengeance, and anticipation coursed through my veins. True to plan, the following day, I embarked on the pretext of retrieving my belongings from home. Yet my true objective lay elsewhere, despite the fleeting nature of the endeavor. The ache of longing for home was palpable as I stepped across the threshold. Donald absent, the house eerily silent. Within the confines of the living room, two documents lay conspicuously on the table: a divorce application and a letter. "Apologies for the haste, but let's dissolve our marriage. Kindly complete and submit the divorce paperwork," the letter implored. A cautious sweep of the shelf revealed the absence of the ATM card, confirming my suspicion that Donald had absconded with it. Ordinarily, the loss of such a substantial sum might evoke dismay, yet a smile graced my lips. "Operation successful," I murmured, the satisfaction palpable. Had Donald been present, my cryptic remark would surely have confounded him. With resolve, I proceeded to fill out the divorce application, gathering the essentials required for my hospital stay. Departing from the home we had shared for years, I ensured to file the divorce paperwork en route, severing the final tether binding me to Donald. Back at the hospital, I braced myself for the challenges ahead, engaging in discussions on various fronts. Later, as I settled into a moment of reprieve, my attention was drawn to a flurry of missed calls from Donald, accompanied by a barrage of messages, all echoing a singular plea: guide me through the withdrawal process. Acknowledging my perusal of the messages, my phone erupted once more. Mindful of my roommate, I retreated to the common area designated for phone calls before returning the call. Emily, at last. I'm unable to access the funds. Please help me navigate this. Donald's tone betrayed a sense of urgency surpassing my expectations. Clearly, the $500,000 held immediate significance for him, yet I harbored no inclination to offer assistance. If you're unable to access it, perhaps it's best to relinquish the endeavor. My retort dripped with cold detachment. An air of desperation infused Donald's response as he implored, "Please, let's not be so callous. We were partners once. Shouldn't we extend each other a helping hand?" The notion of conjugal obligation rang hollow in the face of Donald's blatant betrayal, driven solely by avarice. There existed no compulsion within me to assuage his plea. Your appeal to marital ties holds no weight, Donald. Your intentions are transparent, driven by greed and deceit. I rebutted resolutely, refusing to capitulate to his emotional appeals. Are you encountering difficulties in accessing the funds? I inquired, cutting to the chase. Yes, I'm in dire need of the $500,000. Please aid me. Donald's plea betrayed the urgency of his predicament. Despite possessing the ATM card necessary for accessing the substantial sum, he found himself thwarted at every turn. Concerned that he might have misinterpreted the process, Donald reached out to me for guidance. As I listened to his explanation, his plea for assistance resonated with an uncharacteristic vulnerability, his voice tinged with desperation. The irony of his predicament threatened to elicit a sardonic chuckle from me. Opting to confront Donald with the stark reality, I delivered the crushing blow. Your approach is correct, but the ATM card you possess has been rendered useless. I disclosed. Donald's incredulity was palpable as he interjected. What do you mean? An ATM card should function normally, a sentiment rooted in logical expectation, yet futile in this instance. Why? Because earlier today, I reported it stolen. I revealed, punctuating the revelation with a weighty silence. Donald's stunned silence echoed through the receiver, the gravity of the situation sinking in. That day, en route from the hospital, I had visited the bank and initiated the necessary steps to report the theft of the card. Donald's illicit acquisition of my ATM card, with intentions of claiming the $500,000 for himself, amounted to theft in its purest form. It was only fitting that I took decisive action. The card he possessed was now incapable of accessing the substantial sum. Furthermore, our matrimonial bond had disintegrated. He could no longer hide behind the guise of spousal privilege. Donald himself had extinguished any possibility of accessing the $500,000. How does it feel to be outwitted by the very person you belittled? I mused aloud, my weariness punctuating the exchange. I need the $500,000 right now, please. I'll do anything, just give me the money. Donald's plea echoed with desperation, his urgency palpable. Yet I struggled to comprehend the sudden need for such a substantial sum. Why the sudden urgency for $500,000? What have you gotten yourself into? The ominous uncertainty gnawed at me, compelling me to seek clarification from Donald. In response, he began to unravel the tale of his misfortune. 2 days ago, upon learning of the $500,000, Donald rashly resigned from his job, anticipating a windfall. He squandered a significant portion on gambling, accumulating a staggering debt of $300,000. The situation grew dire as creditors demanded repayment within a week, threatening Donald's precarious future. Deluded by the notion that the ATM card linked to the $500,000 would resolve his woes, he continued his reckless spending unabated. However, his misguided optimism was shattered when his attempts to withdraw the funds from the bank proved futile. Stripped of the $500,000 lifeline, Donald faced an uncertain fate. As Donald recounted his plight, panic laced his voice, rendering his plea for assistance all the more poignant. His distress seemed genuine, devoid of deceit or pretense. A heavy sigh escaped me as I processed the depth of his folly. Donald's reckless pursuit of wealth had led him down a perilous path, squandering $300,000 in mere days. The version of me that once endured his transgressions and lived modestly alongside him might have entertained notions of extending aid. But now, devoid of any remnants of affection for Donald, his pleas elicited no sympathy, only a wry amusement at his misguided expectation that I would come to his rescue. Yet Donald persisted, his pleas now tinged with desperation. "Please, you're my last hope," he implored. His persistence grated on my nerves, an unwelcome distraction from my pressing need for treatment. This predicament was entirely of Donald's own making. Had he demonstrated even a modicum of care as a husband and fulfilled my request to retrieve my belongings on time, I might have considered sharing some of the $500,000 with him. But his indifference spoke volumes. "I'm sorry, but I refuse to provide you with the $500,000 or offer any assistance. This is your burden to bear. After neglecting your duties as a husband for so long, it's cowardly to seek help now simply because we're technically still married," I asserted, my tone unyielding. "Don't be so heartless. Our history together as husband and wife can't simply be discarded with a piece of paper." Donald attempted to appeal to the remnants of our past. "What history? You've only ever leaned on me," I retorted, unmasking his attempts to manipulate the situation to his advantage. "I won't give in to your pleas, no matter how desperate you become." Donald's desperation only seemed to intensify. "Please, Emily, I'm begging you. You're my only lifeline. If you abandon me now, I don't know what will become of me." His words bordered on blaming me for his misfortune. Yet it was Donald who bore sole responsibility for his predicament. Had he not squandered recklessly, he wouldn't be facing this uncertain future. If he hadn't chosen to sever ties with me simply because he believed he had access to wealth, none of this would have transpired. Enough with the excuses. You're facing the consequences of your actions. Deal with it yourself. Goodbye. With those words, I terminated the call. Ignoring subsequent attempts from Donald to reach me, I took the proactive step of blocking his contact to forestall any further communication. With the divorce papers filed and formalities completed, Donald and I were now strangers, our ties officially severed. Embracing the newfound liberation from my past, I confronted my battle with cancer head-on. After a grueling struggle, I emerged victorious and was discharged from the hospital. Through a friend, I learned that Donald's whereabouts remained a mystery since our last encounter. Bereft of contact with me, he resorted to desperate measures, reaching out to family and friends in a bid to borrow money. However, the exorbitant amount he sought, $300,000, coupled with the urgency of his request, raised suspicions, and he found himself unable to secure any assistance. In essence, he was trapped in a cycle of debt, unable to repay the borrowed sum. Though uncertain of Donald's fate, it was evident that he was enduring a fate worse than hell itself. A profound sense of satisfaction washed over me at the thought. As for myself, having triumphed over cancer, I relocated from the house shared with Donald to a new abode, where I commenced working from home, relishing in my newfound independence. Thankfully, my financial stability remained intact. While friends occasionally inquire about my prospects of finding love anew, the harrowing memories of my tumultuous marriage with Donald have dissuaded me from entertaining thoughts of remarriage. I find solace in living freely and contentedly, embracing solitude over the complexities of married life.